Good to see you.
Yeah. Good to see you too.
Yeah, I feel like I'm coming through full circle. We came last time. We spoke about a few things in South African football.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think maybe it would be wise to obviously just maybe let the viewers know that you are very much involved in football in terms of just obviously commentary, the love of the game. You still play it where you do, and you've got a voice. Not just the voice of fan debate and fanfare, but obviously very structured and important conversation that you do uphold. So it's always good to have you on my platform. Sure. And I value your opinion and your voice. So that's why you are here, brother.
Thank you, my dog. No, it's always good to be here, to talk about the game. I mean, I think the game is so vast, on and off the pitch, that you can literally talk about football every day.
Yeah.
For some people, it's irritating. Like I've got colleagues here at work where I talk football with them. And then the other colleagues will be like, and
it's funny because that round ball connects so many people. Just like 11 guys on a pitch or 22 guys on a pitch, chasing one ball, 90,000 people in stadiums. That's just the power, and it shows you like what the game really means to us.
I mean, you look at, for example, the Club World Cup, which ended just recently, and what it did from a cultural point of view in terms of football. Different clubs from around the world, east, north, south, west, coming together and competing. And not only for, the 3 points and the millions of dollars on hand, but also showcasing the belief in the style of football that they are playing, belief in the philosophies that they implement in how they play football in the respective leagues across the world. And then what it creates is almost like is there a different style that represents different parts of the world? Or is it about football being so universal as a language that you can almost watch a Sundowns playing like maybe a Barcelona in some respect or a Man City in other respect, but coming from a completely different continent, playing against the European side that has its own identity. And so I think that's the one thing that I really enjoyed about the Club World Cup. And I think what football does is that it does exactly that. It's a marriage of, culture, not just about who we are, but how we see football.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's very important that you spoke about what the game has outside of just being on the pitch, the lifestyle, the culture, the elements that come with football. If you look into the stadiums, you see how people, dress up in different costumes to represent their team and what they mean. And that brings us to, the crux of this interview and the crux of this discussion, because we look at football from a global perspective, and we obviously have to customize it to our league, decide to say what works for us and what doesn't. And a lot seems to not be working for us in the PSL.
Like what?
First, in terms of like, let's just look at this, right? We've got the PSL that obviously was formed back in the 1970s, the NSL handbook that was, the forefathers of our football put together what constitutes people buying teams, what do you need to enter the teams, and the governance around the game. And right now we sit and we see so many teams being sold off. One can wake up in the morning and win the lotto and decide to have a team in the PSL. That's the nature of our league. And these are the things that I'm talking about, to say people attach themselves to teams. There's a history, there's a lineage of support. My great-grandfather supported, and, you walk around the mall and you see your local players, they in and around the community. That is becoming such a distant memory in South Africa when you go about it, because only the top 3 teams who established, Chiefs, Sundowns, Pirates, maybe put in Amazulu as the teams that have solidified themselves over the years. When we look in the last 10, 20 years, where's your Santos? Where's your Vets? Where's your Supersport? We all know. Where's your Benoni Premier United? Where's your Bushbuck Ridge? Those are clubs that had a lot of heritage. And they mean a lot to the PSL. And today you don't find them. How do people then get to support the Chiefs Galaxy? Where are they based? They're based this side, but they play.
It's such a powerful thing that you are referring to, Mfana, because especially when you mention what teams or clubs mean to people in different communities around the country. Because my understanding, and maybe it's an old school way of thinking, is that teams are born from a location, as in a community, really. And they galvanize support over time within the community, where the community backs them. There's a real sense of support and endorsement from a community. And then the love for the team grows almost organically. And that's why you have certain clubs that will identify with certain areas and would have built a really big following. And now you fast forward to these days and you're looking at a PSL table and you're like, okay, what does this club mean? Where are they from? Do they just appear from a brainstorm in a boardroom, or a brainstorm at a pub somewhere with people who have money and they're like, let's do this? And it takes me back to what clubs mean. And I question it. Like, what do football clubs mean to people? What do football clubs do for people in a community? And how do we keep that alive?
Yeah.
You know, how could we have kept, for instance, Moroka Swallows alive? How could we have made sure that, you know, Super Sports remains Super Sport, considering the impact that both those clubs in their own way have had on football and beyond? I mean, when you look at Super Sport and their development structures, I mean, it's unbelievable. My son, who's 17 now, started at the Super Sport soccer schools. I think he was 5 or 6, somewhere there. And that kind of development structures really created a great platform for young talent. And so you just look at that as an example and you say, did that not mean anything? Could that not have been protected in some way? Look, I'm no, you know, businessman who's going to tell you about business structures and what it means to do mergers and acquisitions. But what I can tell you is that from an emotive point of view, as football lovers, clubs mean something to people. Yeah. They represent a lot more than just, you know, a PSL status.
And I think it's very important to mention the fact that football's biggest stakeholder is the fans at the end of the day. I mean, we all know that we saw that in Europe when the top brass of European football tried to break away from the UEFA Champions League and create their own Super League. The reason they got so much backlash was because of the fans and the fans' lineage towards those clubs, with club history and associations with the fan clubs and all of that. It was an absolute no. You know what I mean? So in South Africa, we don't have that because of what you're saying. There's not an identity enough with certain clubs to say SuperSport, who's got the development structure that has produced some of the best talents in the country. I mean, and they just dissolve like that for a 50 million.
So how do we protect that? You know, how do we defend that? How do we? I mean, does it boil down to the fact that maybe football as a business, running a football club as a business, is like unsustainable? Is it unsustainable? Because I've heard a lot about how you need to be, you know, in a position where as a club owner, you have deep pockets and that football burns a lot of money. You burn money. If you want to make money, don't own a football club, whatever. So if that's the case, then why do we have this musical chair situation happening in the Premier Soccer League in South Africa where there does seem to be an interest? Clubs are going on auction, people want to buy, etc. So I'm left confused as a fan to say, if football is such a unsustainable business from a club ownership point of view, then why is there this interest? And how do we protect football clubs? How do we make sure that clubs don't die? Is it just purely a money thing? Is it just about the money? Are you telling me there's no money in South Africa?
There's a lot of money.
You know what I'm saying?
Where it goes is a different story. And I think just the barriers of entry, just coming to the solutions point, maybe the barriers of entry should be something that people need to look at in terms of, you know, there needs to be some sort of criteria to sit down in front of a PSL panel and in front of your PSL executive committee to lay down exactly what it is that you plan to do with this club. Moving clubs around, like plucking a Super Sport and taking it all the way to a Bloemfontein, for instance. What happens to the kids that are in that development?
That's what I'm thinking.
Those structures should be set in front of a committee, and the committee then needs to decide to say, if you do buy this club for 50 mil or whatever million, these are the structures that need to be in place. You cannot rip away the academy. You need to give us a guarantee that financially, we also need to know who runs the clubs. It shouldn't be this thing like, we don't know. Back in the day, we knew who the club owners were. You really knew who owned Santos. You really knew who was running Vets. You really knew who was running Morocco Swallows. You know what I mean? So that is a conversation. I think, like you said, I'm also not too indulged in so much of the nitty-gritties of what the executive decides, but from a fan perspective, it does leave us looking at the league saying, what is going on?
I mean, if you're telling me that the process of acquiring a status in the PSL, a football club status, is really just down to who's got the most money, then we've got a big problem. We've got to be in a position where there's certain checks and balances, and I'll be curious to find out what those are, and maybe it's about the powers that be reviewing what those checks and balances are, so that there's a mechanism that protects clubs to some degree and also makes it a little bit more difficult for anyone who may not necessarily have a good intention, as much as they may have the financial investment, but a good intention around the reasons why they want to take over a football club or buy a status, etc. There's got to be more stricter, some sort of mechanisms in place, because like you rightly said, it means anyone. I can convince maybe my bosses at Prime Media and it's like, guys, let's get back into football because you know they were part of Cheese at some point, but let's have our own club. There's a club, Elahlile, status is being auctioned, let's go. I don't know if that's the way to go. So I really hope, because here's the thing, from a fan point of view, it's confusing. Can you imagine being a fan of SuperSport United?
Yeah. Where do you go now?
You've been following this club forever, and then all of a sudden it's no more. It's now something else. So what must happen? Like, what must you do? Does that mean all the energy and the time and the effort and the support and the investment in all regard that I put in is just flushed away.
And in most cases, those fans get absorbed by the bigger guys, and then they increase their fan base, and they increase their offerings because they get bigger numbers and better numbers from a fan as well.
So I don't know if it's about models, from a club point of view.
It'd be interesting to actually get somebody that sits in the committee to basically explain that to us.
Yeah, if you can find one of the relevant people there to just kind of like paint the picture.
I'll find out who I can speak to, so we can poke holes at the system. So moving on, man. I mean, the PSL is about to start. Obviously, been preseason around the world. A lot of campaigns are going to start off in August. Let's tap into the PSL right now. But before we do that, another contentious issue and a lot of fan debate online with regards to the PSL awards that just happened recently. We obviously seen Orlando Pirates whitewash in terms of majority of the awards. Lucas Ribeiro Costa rightly and deservedly so got all the awards that he was nominated for. I don't think there was a contender in that situation. But the debate obviously online is surrounding Cash Contant Makaula winning midfielder of the season. Another thing that I want to pose to you is that we have Ikras Reyners, who is an excellent striker in South Africa, the best striker we have in our South African shores. You've got goalkeeper of the season, you've got defender, midfielder, and you don't have a forward of the season. Yes, you've got a top goal scorer. That is an inevitable one. If you're a striker, you play, you get the most goals, you sleep knowing that you're going to get an award.
Sure.
But what happens to the forward of the season? Is that something that we should also look into? Because we're rewarding defenders, midfielders, goalkeepers. So you're telling me that if you're not in that category, you don't get a mention. So let's start off with probably defender of the season. They gave it to Sipo Chain from Orlando Pirates.
You mean the goalkeeper?
Sure. How do you just your?
Yeah, look, I think the thing about these awards, especially from my understanding about how the PSL awards are structured, is that there are panels, journalists and players, etc., who form part of the judging panel, and they're the ones who decide. And what I think we all understand this. People have an emotional attachment to football. And because we're all human, we'll all have an opinion and we'll all have a subjective view on a club, on a player, on how a player performed in their specific roles. So you're never going to have consensus on the majority of the award categories. Because of that, we all are subjective. Then someone will say, okay, rationally, let's bring in the stats. Let's bring in the numbers and say, okay, cool. Yes, this is how you feel about this player, but what are their numbers? And do their numbers speak volume to your perception of them? And sometimes that is now where
it gets a bit murky.
A bit murky, and that's where the rage of debate now sits. Because some might argue that Allende from Sundowns, probably the best midfielder this season.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I feel Allende was exceptional for Sundowns.
I agree with you.
Against a plethora of different types of opposition and teams with different playing styles. And in all those scenarios, he generally managed to rise to the occasion and fulfill his role. He controls the tempo of the game. He dictates how Sundowns plays from the back to the forwards. He doesn't seem to run out of energy. He doesn't seem to run out of ideas. And for a player that is physically, not the most competitive in his make, he really has managed to punch above his weight. I would have thought that he would have been more deserving. His stats also suggest that they're a little bit better in terms of assists, etc. But who's to say that Makaula is not that and more?
No, 100%. But we will get to that midfield debate because you were talking in terms of the panel. So now I know for a fact that I obviously asked you, and I want to ask you obviously just in terms of what your say is in terms of the goalkeepers, the defender, and then obviously midfielder, and then we'll talk about. I think the others are pretty much simple.
Sure.
But you yourself have sat on a panel, and you've declined. The request or the invitation to sit on a SAMA or to sit on a musical or music industry awards. You mentioned that. So the people that are there, do you think that it is time now that in South African football we open up to the public?
It'll be interesting
to allow them to have
a say. It'll be interesting.
And literally have a poll whereby I think I don't know how to automate it because
sure.
I mean we've got so much AI in the world these days. But something that will allow the fans to literally have an opinion. Because here's another thing that I think. Yes, we talk about the stats. Yes, we talk about what he means for the team and what about the eye test? I've always been firm on an eye test. When I was growing up, I never got to see how good Tinashe Ngomashi was when I used to watch Cheese on TV because it was always about Jabupule, Vulavala, the goal scorer, Patrick Mabedi's crunching tackles, but I never appreciated CDMs until I got to watch Tina Shinangomashe play in the midfield.
Sure.
You know, the amount of work you do from reading the game, you got to be able to scan, you got to be able to pass, you got to be able to shoot, you got to be able to tackle.
Sure.
So you almost become the complete footballer playing in that position.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate as I get, as I got older as a football fan. So hence I'm saying, I think the Makaula nomination, you don't get nominated if you don't deserve to win an award. Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if he's nominated and he wins, hey, hoo-ha, whatever, it's all subjective. But for me, I also didn't see Makaula's brilliance until I watched him in the CAF Champions League against Pyramids and NC Alger. And I was like, Jesus, this guy's got it. You know what I mean? Why isn't he in the national team? Those are questions I was asking myself in the stadium.
Yeah.
I understand. So the eye test also needs to come into question. Like we say, the fans, an online situation where, you know, we can run up a poll and vote. So it always is contentious. But for me, honestly, if he's won it and the people who've decided whether they are Pirates biased, whether they're subjective and they don't like Sundowns, he deserves it nonetheless. Yes, are we saying that Alende and Tebogo Mokoena are not better players? No, of course they're brilliant players.
Sure.
Probably this season, what they evaluated and how they saw it, he then does deserve it. And I'm fully for it, even if it's not the most popular opinion.
It's a general pattern across the globe. Whether you want to look at the PSL awards or the CAF awards or even the Ballon d'Or or the FIFA awards, there will always be a subjective perspective. Yes, one can qualify any of those three midfielders you've mentioned and why each of them would deserve to win. But in the end, there's got to be one person. And there'll always be a swing depending on how someone feels about a particular player at that particular point. And that's why I think my opening statement was these awards are always going to be subjective, particularly when you have voting panels behind closed doors somewhere. Everybody's got a feeling. Yes, they'll claim they're 100% objective, but we all know that it's not the case.
It will lean towards the feeling all the time.
A scoreline is 100% objective because it tells you what the result is.
The performance.
But the stats will give you a completely different picture in terms of, you know, who dominated, who did that, and then it changes the feeling of what you feel should have been the outcome in a game. But I'm not one to say a player doesn't deserve recognition. So even if one player wins and my favorite didn't win, you know, think of all the hard work that player puts in game out. Sometimes, like you said, in a midfield situation where you're not always going to get the shine. You're not always going to be the star boy, you know what I mean, the poster player. But you're there. You're doing the hard work. You're doing the grinding. You're taking the hits. When there's fire, you expect it to be there. When there's a build-up, you have to be there. And often midfielders really get overlooked in terms of, you know, prominence. So I think a player like Makaula, for me, is a deserving player and is the kind of player that in his career deserves recognition at some point or the other.
100%. Yeah. I think that's well put. I like the fact that you were there. So, but just wrap it in terms of just like your opinion on China being goalkeeper of the season.
Again, stats.
Okay.
You know, it's about, you know, who had better stats. When I looked at the comparisons, it seemed as if Ronwen Williams had better stats. But then some people argue to say, yeah, but who made the most saves? And then it's like this whole thing. Is Sipho China a brilliant goalkeeper? Absolutely. He wears the Pirates jersey with pride. He plays. I think he's the best goalkeeper they've had in a long time. Who's complete in terms of
after Senzo, you'd say?
Probably after Senzo, yes. You know, in terms of many areas of the game, shot stopping, the distribution, you know, communication with the back four, the chemistry he has. I think he's got it.
And I think he represents Pirates very well, like you said. Like he when I hear him speak on interviews, little, you know, content that he does with some of the content creators around Pirates, he really looks like he's a character in the dressing room. The guys like him, so it is very important to keep and have that.
So is there a huge sort of margin between Chipezeze and Ronwen and Chaine? You know what I mean? In other words, was he eons ahead? You know, did Chaine win by miles? Probably not.
Yeah, it's very
not fine margins. So in that scenario, I have no real issue with him winning, but I'm a Ronwen Williams fan.
Okay, yes.
On any given day, I will always back Ronwen Williams.
On that panel, you were going.
I would have gone for Ronwen.
There we go. Thank you very much.
And reasons well documented.
Okay.
But I love the growth, and this is the other thing that I think we need to also appreciate: where a player was, and where they are, and appreciating growth in a player. And Sipho China is a player that I've watched grow.
Also going through a lot of stick when he started.
Yeah. But he's risen above that. He didn't crumble. He didn't fall into a groove of lack of confidence and self-doubt, whatever. From other players, you know what I mean?
Honestly, another keeper.
So in the end, I love the growth in Sipho China. Like, I love the player he's become and the player he is now. And when he's in goals for Bafana, I've got no worries to say, I'm not stressing.
Because the drop-off shouldn't be that big. Because I always used to tell some of my friends that when you remember Cunha and Senzo, they were, obviously Cunha was was nicking it in terms of his world-class performance and all that. But if he wasn't available for the national team and we had sent it to deputize, we were not stressed. We were not worried.
Yes,
the distance wasn't far off. And I was starting to worry with Ronwen being so far ahead. The
gap was huge.
That was starting to materialize. But to say, if he's not available, it's a drastic drop-off.
Yeah.
But I think Sipo has closed that gap.
Sure.
And like you said, it's an appreciation of a person's hard work and rising above. Great one. Let's just move quickly as well to just the defenders of the season. From my side, I test as well involved with this one. Upodlela was not really a player that was, he made a name for himself after Nda's injury, and Sasani got injured, but he had a nice partnership with Sasani. He came out and then they brought in Umbogazi as well, who's also done really well for himself, and now they've named him captain of the club. From a person who wasn't playing at all, took his opportunity. What we're talking about, growth. Get in there, get stuck in, raise your hand, and now he's the captain of the club. And that has to either be second fiddle to him and Bogazi or Sasani when he comes back. But he's now the captain of the team and he starts.
Sure. Look, I think defenders are always appreciated in football. Maybe not as much as strikers, but I think defenders have always been important in terms of looking at a team's makeup and say, all right, they're great up front, but what's happening at the back? For me, if I look at a player like TLB, for instance, he's been many things, and he's represented a number of things. How important youth development is in football. He's also represented the idea that you are too young to start. Let's wait for you to grow. Let's give you time, etc. And he's almost defied a few of those,
broken those myths.
Those myths around, when is the right time? The right time is when a player looks to be ready to play.
And it's also trial and error. I mean,
at the first team, at first team level. So I think he's one player that has really done well for himself, but he's also managed to put in performances that have changed the complexion of results for his team. So it's not just about the individual, progress and getting starts and whatever, but it's also about how his performances have helped Orlando Pirates win games, achieve whatever they've achieved in the last season, and get to as far as they got in virtually, almost all competitions that they're involved in.
But at least he got an award for the Nedbank Young Promising.
Yes,
so
yes,
that's good to see his hard work being recognized in some category.
Yeah. So for me, when I look at that in overall, I say to myself, well, from a defender's point of view, I think he is someone that is exciting.
Future Bafana captain.
We have a lot of leaders. And that's the other thing. There are a lot of leaders in this group of players right now. And so maybe on the list of that, but if you said to me, make him captain of Bafana tomorrow, because tomorrow is still the future. Maybe not. But certainly on the list.
Like a next AFCON, probably. You could be there.
Give it time. The Hugo Bruce in me is saying, because he's very conservative with young players. Give it time. Give it time. Let them go through what they need to go through to get where they need to.
Is he on the plane to AFCON December?
Absolutely on the plane to AFCON. There's no doubt about that.
All right, fantastic. Let's just touch on Specie a little bit as well. In terms of what you've seen from him. So he could also be another one who's raising his hand to say, guys, starting birth Bafana.
Absolutely starting birth Bafana. I mean, we've got an international break coming through. He's been a solid player, reliable. He's a leader. He's clear. He's also honest. He's honest about his own individual performance. He's honest about the team's performance, but you can tell that his presence makes a difference in the team, and then also, of course, in the defensive setup.
And he looks like a leader that is not necessarily all about him. You can see how he's got that charismatic.
No, he's got.
Let's do this thing collectively.
He's an El Capitano. Yeah, that's the mold that CBC fits. And I think he's always had that. It was just a question of him growing into that role, but he's always had the mold of a leader, of somebody who is a leader of men, as we put it.
And that's just entrenched in you, whether you like it or not. Okay, fantastic. So I mean, I don't think I'd like to touch much about Lucas Ribeiro Costa in terms of his awards.
Sure, I mean,
he deserves.
Oh, absolutely.
I think what I want to ask about him is, would you like to see him stay in the PSL because of the kind of product that he is and what he brings to the league? I mean, I think for any purist football fan, you would love to keep all of our best players in the country, and particularly for the fact that he's not South African, would love to have such internationals representing the PSL. I, for one, would like to see maybe stay one more season, but I know that he's got so many offers already overseas. Just to sign up with a bang, because this would be his third, if not fourth season, if I'm not mistaken. So thoughts on that?
It would be great for him to stay, because I think the PSL as a product needs to have the best of the best from different parts of the world. And so if it is possible to keep quality players in the league, it can only be a good thing. There are people who watch games because of a particular player.
Yeah.
There are people who watch Pirates because of Rile. There are people who are going to watch, Sundowns because of Lucas Ribeiro or, Peter Shalulile or whoever else. So the idea of quality in the league and keeping it is very important for the product. It doesn't mean that you can't go and find other talent to replace a player that leaves.
Yeah.
But you can't replace special players. You can't replace them.
And he's one of them.
You simply have to find another player that's special, that has certain qualities that make them special. But they'll never replace that player. So whoever comes into Sundowns, whether as a striker, whether as a forward of any kind, will never replace a Peter Shalulile, Lucas Ribeiro, a Reyners. It's just not possible. So it would be great for him to stay. I think Sundowns would probably feel that because they've been flirting with the Champions League for so long, that maybe next season could be that season, after having gone as far as they've gone, and they would need someone like a Ribeiro who's got that experience of, continental football in the team. Losing him would create a massive void up front. Sundowns being Sundowns will probably fix that problem because they can afford to fix the problem. But Ribeiro is special, and I would want him to stay in the league, and I think Sundowns would be happy to keep him if they can.
All right, so rapid prediction in terms of the Betway Premiership standings. Obviously, we know that Orlando Pirates have beefed up their squad immensely. There's some interesting signings there. Sipho Nduli, for me, probably the one that I'm looking forward to seeing the most. Sibele as well. Apollos is also someone who I think is quite exciting to see how they link up.
Yeah.
The preseason that they had, I think, in Spain was really good. They played up against really, really top-notch opposition, whether it was a second division like a Bolton and Las Palmas. Those are reputable teams. Las Palmas was in La Liga not so long ago. Bolton in the Premier League not so long ago. Kaizer Chiefs also had they in the Netherlands. Not so great from my perspective in terms of what I've seen, but I think towards the latter stages of the last games, it looked like there was some patterns of play and some bit of respectability that you could take out of that. But Sundowns, we would say their preseason was the Club World Cup that way. Yes, guys, we do talk about the big three a lot because, to be quite honest, it is what it is, I know a lot of people like, but everybody keeps talking about the big three. Yeah, we have to talk about the big three because they are in contention. As Kukune is there, we know that they'll be pushing the two big boys that are running for the league. But more just in terms of your general overtake, in terms of where do you see your Sundowns, Pirates, Chiefs, Kukune landing up, Stellenbosch as well, maybe just some of the players that you've seen from preseason, just as a wrap-up.
So let's talk about Stellies. Stellies have lost so many quality players to the big three you talk of. And even now, overseas, in England, with one of their players going, I think, to QPR.
Yeah, Tyler Smith.
The young boy from the under-20 AFCON winning team.
The one with the throw.
Yes. Stellies will be fine without their star players. Basadine has just gone to Sundowns. And so they have
Nduli's just gone to Pirates.
Yes, Nduli's just gone to Pirates. So they've got all the capability in the world to just keep that machine and that engine running. And they'll be right up there again. I've no doubt about the fact that Stellies will be top 4. They'll be right up there. I think Pirates have really signed quality. I think Pirates have taken a very interesting direction in terms of, the who, right? Mbule coming in as well.
How excited about him.
For his sake, I hope all will go well because he's a quality player. He's got the material.
He looks the part. It's just a matter of all the other
stuff that he needs to get right. So, Apollos. Who wouldn't want to sign Apollos?
Who wanted him?
Who wouldn't want to sign Apollos, especially now when he really is sort of like at the precipice of his peak, if you like. So I think Pirates have done phenomenally well in this transfer window. And I'm sitting here thinking they have to get at least 2 trophies. With this team, I watched the preseason. They look the part in terms of some sort of identity and what they're trying to do.
They're trying to take out.
I can see it, right? But of course, it's going to be in the MTN8 and every other competition where we really get to see what's what.
I'd like to take it a step further. You say you'd like them to, or they should win at least 2.
At the least.
I said last season that, despite Pirates pushing Sundowns in the last 2-3 seasons, they had to win the league. That was my say. And I was bold about it. And I think that this season it doesn't change. Unfortunately, it is a new coach with a new squad. And his reasoning could be he doesn't win it because he's tinkering.
Well, that's the thing.
What are those 2? Because, if you're going to say MTN8, it's 4 games in, you've got Netbank, you've got Black Label, and then you've got the league, and then you've got CAF. And CAF is going to be difficult, of course, so it's not a surety. Within the domestic competitions, what are the two that you think are an imperative? You're Dr. Ivan Koza right now. You have to win those two. Which two are they?
Well, it's got to be the league.
Thank you.
The league is something that Pirates has to win, and with these signings and the makeup right now, they're going to have to really, punch a little bit harder. They're really going to have to take Sundowns all the way to the edge and even edge them to win the league
and make it a proper contest.
Yeah, and they've got to be able to manage the different phases of the league well, which is what Sundowns has always managed to do. They always have a good approach in terms of, in every season, when they look at the league cycles, whether it's 5 games or whatever, and they always manage to manage the league campaign so well. Pirates will go on a good run, and then Ning will start coming off at a bad time in the season. And by the time they come back on, Sundowns is gone.
Yeah.
So, yes, new coach, huge factor in terms of controlling, the change room, implementing his ideas and his philosophies and what he's trying to do. Maybe he's going to take a risk-averse approach and just continue with what has been done. Or maybe he's going to be bold and say, no, I've got something that can take the team to an even higher level. Whatever it is, at the end of the day, come the end of the season, Pirates should win the league with this team. Sundowns is probably going to be more of the same. I mean, signing, for example, a Basadine.
Yeah.
I mean, what a nightmare at left back if you're the coach and you're thinking, who do I play?
They're so overly indexed in that left back position. I mean, with Divine Lunga, with Aubrey,
the
other boy, I forgot his name. I think
Terence Mashiko,
he might be
out,
and now obviously Basadine, probably does start because he's a national team player and it's probably in his contract with the clause as well. I think for me, it's a matter for them now. Cardoso didn't do well enough. I think he failed last season. It was expected from him to take over and win the league. In my opinion, I think the CAF Champions League final loss to Pyramids was a sucker blow. And I think that was something that he's got blood in his hands for not playing Timbers one in that final as well. So I think for me, it's the league for them, as per usual, with Pirates. And obviously the CAF, and definitely they need to pick up their domestic trophies as well. They've been running away from them.
That's an interesting one, and hence I mentioned how they manage their league campaign, and I'm wondering what they need to do to have is it a different approach in terms of managing their club cup competition campaign, because at the end of the day, it's 4 games, 5 games, and then final, or whatever the story may be. And, what is the difference? So it's going to be interesting to see how they manage that. But for Sundowns, it's got to be the Champions League. For Pirates, it's got to be the league. I think for Chiefs, it's got to be another cup competition.
Kind of domestic, yeah.
So, and obviously, MTN out the way, whatever is left, they've got to capitalize on that.
So retaining a net bank and probably contesting strongly in the Black Label,
for example.
And a league finish for you this season for Kaizer Chiefs?
I think, look, yes, we had preseason. It wasn't the best, but the team got to integrate the new players, etc. I would probably hope for a top 8 finish this season. Top 8 finish for Chiefs this season. Top 4, I'm not sure.
Still a bit of a stretch. Yeah.
So for now, I think a top 8 finish, very conservatively top 8 for Chiefs. Top 4 for Pirates, Sundowns, and Stellies. I would even go as far as saying Stellies could possibly win a trophy this season. They've got everything it takes. We've seen it, so it wouldn't be impossible for them to get something as well.
All right. Lastly, before we wrap it up, obviously it's always another beautiful banter amongst the fans online. The kits have been released this season. We've seen Pirates released a beautiful kit. We've seen Cheese released a beautiful kit, and Sundowns released a beautiful kit, but not so many people agree with what is beautiful and what is not, and what is trash and what is, very beautiful. But one thing I do like about the apparel now, and what I'm seeing through sports or football fans, is the way they are styling their kits. The ladies also coming into the fold and having different styling options for the lifestyle apparel. That's also good. And I also read somewhere that Kaizer Chiefs have sold over I think how many million tops?
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, like that. Which tells you everything you need to know about why a Kappa or any other brand would want to work with Chiefs from a sponsorship point of view.
Yeah, just your take in terms of and no bias in this. Like, just what do you think of the Pirates kits? Obviously, the home kits I think are always standard.
Yeah,
from all teams, you got to keep to your traditional colors. They change a little bit of patterns here and there.
Yeah.
The templates almost the same, but the away kits is where the creativity comes into place and the story is told behind why this and why that. Just give me your thoughts.
Look, I was
what you like
with Chiefs, for example. It's been interesting with away kits because we've moved around. We've had purples, and we've had greens and blues, but there's this grey that
has always been there. But the training kits.
Yes. But I like it. I like it too. I like that grey. There's something about it that kind of gives me.
Let me tell you why
presence.
I like it because I think it's a good kit. Because I think there's a difference between a kit that looks good stylistically from a lifestyle apparel, like you coming to work in a kit or as a football top, and a kit that looks good on the players when they're wearing it. I think it's a beautiful kit on the players on the field. Yeah,
but also even from a styling point of view, I mean, you want to have at least one, sort of kit. You want to have home, you want to have a few aways, etc. So that's not one that you'd be embarrassed to wear. Just say, So I think from an away kit point of view, that grey is really something special. And the design patterns, it stands out, it's unique, and it's bold. You can't have a jersey that's just typical and, plain and like, it's expected. You got to raise eyebrows a little bit. But I think that one ticks most boxes.
And then the Pirates one?
You see, the thing about the Pirates kits, I'll be honest, all of their kits are just beautiful. And I'm talking about, the colorways they've had even last season. What was it, a turquoise or what that color was?
Even the one where they had like the skull.
Pirates always have beautiful home and away kits standard. I don't know if it's
an Adidas thing.
It's an Adidas thing or it's the color schemes, but they really... So I always feel like of the three, Pirates always has the better kits. I think my honest opinion.
No, 100%. I think where they got it right, Pirates, is when they started integrating the red into their kits. When they started integrating that red, it changed the dynamics of the kits.
Yeah.
I think with Sundowns, it's always pretty much the same template. For me, I looked at the home and away. I think blue and white as a color scheme is always beautiful, but the template is always the same.
Obviously
the Club World Cup, powder blue, sun, stay soft looking.
Yeah, I saw that. Nice. I saw that, and the pattern on the shirts as well. It was something different and something. Obviously, there was a whole thing behind it with Puma and
Kid Super. Yeah, it wasn't. Kid Super guy. He designed
and that whole collabo. But I think it was probably the most unique thing we've seen from Sundowns in a long time on their jersey.
Yeah.
But I think Pirates is probably a shoulder or a cut above all the kits. But from a Chiefs point of view, as a fan, I really like our away kit. I think it's nice. So
you had Pirates killing it, Chiefs coming in second with that away kit, and Sundowns is Sundowns. It is what it is. Puma, collaborate with us. Get us in there. I'll tell you what to do. But nonetheless, guys, that's it. An insightful and an amazing conversation with my friend here, good friend Mo Flavor.
Thank you, my dog. Insightful. Thanks for popping into my office.
Always good to have a young top up with you. Yeah. To catch us on the next one on the Ball with Steezy one time. Away.